BDSM isn't very well understood. What we think it's about isn't actually what it's about at all. And it's the same with strategy. What people think strategy is about, that's not really what it's about either. So if we use kink as the lens with which to learn how to run our businesses more effectively, to build better strategy, it does two birds with one stone. Like, people learn more about kink and understand that better, and people understand strategy more. And more importantly, if I sat down to say, let me tell you about strategy, nobody would be interested, because there's a belief founded on many, many very dull strategy books that strategy is immensely boring. It isn't. It's fascinating. That's not just because I am thrilled by it, but because it's the way to grow your business. Now, kink, who doesn't like something odd to learn about?
Welcome to Gratitude Geek, the relationship marketing podcast, helping DIY marketers find your micro influencer magic so you attract raving fans and repeat buyers. I'm your host, Kandas Rodarte, and this week I'm joined by friend of the podcast and my personal business coach, Liz Scully.
Hello. See, I feel all lovely being a friend of the podcast.
So Liz has spent 20 years working on big Hollywood films. She's won an Emmy, and her work is multi-Oscar nominated. Now she's a business strategist and a mastermind coach, and knows business can be ridiculously fun as well as highly effective. Y'all know I wouldn't have Liz as my business coach if she wasn't fun and effective. She's Irish, nomadic, and as confused as everyone else as to why she speaks with an English accent. Oh my gosh, I'm so happy to have you on the show, Liz.
So I've been looking forward to this all day. Thank you so much for having me.
And it's early in the morning for me because you're in London. So before we get into it, tell us your story. How did you get to where you are? And if you want to throw in how you won your Emmy, that would be cool too.
So I was on some dreadful dinosaur film. Trust me, nothing ages like visual effects. It's just not like I had a lovely and delightful career for 20 years in film, doing beautiful, high-end, state-of-the-art, big Hollywood effects. And nothing ages like VFX. If I go and send you off to look at them, you will have a lot of disappointed listeners. But at the time, let me tell you, they impressed the hell out of people.
Okay, can I just interrupt you there? Because my daughter is a paleontologist, and she grew up watching dinosaur documentaries. And if your Emmy is one of the documentaries that she watched, we need to know this.
No, I did. The Emmy is for a dreadful a fantastic 3-part Hallmark series called Dinotopia that then went on to become an absolutely rubbish series that went on for far, far too long. I had nothing to do with that, I should say. But I did work on the pilot for Walking with Dinosaurs, and Mike Milne,
which is her favorite,
I'm sure. So Mike Milne, that ran that department, was my mentor. Delightful human being. Yeah.
Okay, I got all geeky there for a minute because you just revealed something I didn't know that is another connection that we have. Because you may be responsible for my daughter being a paleontologist. I don't know. You worked on the pilot.
Well, I can give you another connection. So Mike Milne, who headed up the Framestore's 3D department for a long time, is Christopher Robin of A.A. Milne. He's Christopher Robin's son. So A.A. Milne, his granddad.
That's groovy.
No, he will kill me if he hears me saying this. So
okay, well,
tell no one.
Okay, so I interrupted your story. Please continue.
Yes, by mistake. So, there I was, happily creating visual effects and being a geek in film, which is delightful. It filled my heart with amazingly beautiful work and very difficult clients. There is a few people as demanding on earth as film directors, but they're demanding for, frankly, exactly the same reasons that entrepreneurs are. They are busy. They are holding many projects at the same time. They will have a very precise end result, but are very malleable about how you get there. So I ran teams. I worked with highly strung people. And in film, they used to do this thing where they would pick up a group of us who are paid vast sums of money, delightfully, maybe not quite as vast as I might have liked, but good money, so that we would produce beautiful graphics. They'd pick up a group, throw us in a room and say, get on with it for 9 months. And what I discovered was that group is the key to everything. So when I left film from this hugely collaborative space, I wanted to continue that. And that's why I'm interested in mastermind groups. That's why I train people in mastermind groups, because I know that as an entity, as a creature, humans are better in groups. It's helped my business. I know it's helped your business, and it's just delightful. And what's lovely about working with entrepreneurs is, unlike film directors, they tend to be considerably less shouty, but every bit as driven and still want to make something beautiful and are still juggling many projects at the same time. And in film, what I learned is everything's going to go wrong at all times. If it hasn't gone wrong yet, it's only a matter of time. So when I started working with entrepreneurs, I worked with a lot of people who were, frankly, mildly surprised when things went wrong. Yeah, exactly. I was like, so what's your backup plan? I don't have one. Step this way. In film, all we care about is how you fix mistakes. It's not that you made a mistake. It's not that it went wrong. It's how you fix it. And that's why I make strategy very quickly, because there's always that, okay, so I wasn't expecting that to burst into flames, but here's what we're going to do.
Well, sometimes the most iconic moments of movies are mistakes.
Oh, absolutely.
Like the Joker, the explosion not going off in the Joker, and the way that Heath Ledger turns around and looks, and then the explosion happens. I mean, that was a mistake, an iconic mistake that I can't imagine the movie not having.
Oh, exactly. Raiders of the Lost Ark, in that, in the second one, where the guy turns up with the whip and Harrison Ford just pulls out his gun and shoots him. That's because he had dysentery that day. He just wanted to go home.
And that is so indie.
Exactly. They'd had this whole blocking and this expense and stunts and training, and he was like, no, what? I'm going home.
Yeah. Oh, that's so funny. Okay, so let's talk about masterminds. The International Networking Week was the second week of February, and I decided for International Networking Week that I was going to double down on networking. So I attended a whole lot of mostly podcast related networking events. Some of them were Business Network International, BNI. And then I went to this one event called GEM, which is Generous Entrepreneurs in Media. And you're going to recognize the two people who run that. It's Jason Van Orden and Mike Roderick. And the whole point of their networking group, which happens once a month, is they bring in potential podcast guests to introduce them to podcast hosts. And then we do like 10 minutes of speed networking kind of thing with a question that we answer. We're put into groups of 4 or 6. And then after all that is over, then there's breakout rooms to learn something. And so Mike and I were actually in your Mastery Mastermind course together. This was the first time I had seen Mike on Zoom, person, since that course, which was years ago, transformed my life. And I have a whole story about that too. I mean, this could be just gushing about Liz. This whole interview could be
and I'm here for it. Just saying.
But anyway, so I put my hands under my chin and I go, Mike, I can't wait to see how you do this. And he just went through your process beautifully. Because I tell people often that I was trained to run masterminds by the premier mastermind trainer on the planet. I say that all the time. So with all that being said, now that I've gushed all over you and you can absorb all that goodness, let's talk about masterminds. Why are we better in groups?
So I think it actually goes back to sort of when we lived in caves. We have safety in groups. We share information in groups. But from a modern perspective, running a business, let's face it, is difficult. Even in the good times, there are hard things to do. There's who you work with, how you hire, there's cash flow, all of those things. And if you are a small business, or even worse, if you are a micro business, it's just you and maybe an assistant. And there is no one to talk to about this stuff. And there is a lot of decisions. And as we both know, our partners are sick to death of hearing us talk about this. And they really don't care what your sales page looks like. And sure, they are fascinated by the fact that you can generate income and they want you to be happy, but they do not really care whether it's a yellow background or a blue background. And why should they? Whereas your mastermind group are there in lockstep with you doing the same thing. If it's a well-curated group, which I'm sure yours are, which Sadly, many people aren't. But if it's a good mastermind group, people are there to support each other. And by looking outwards and looking at other people's problems, it often unlocks your own stuff. You know, the way you can look at two people dating and think, oh, they should not be together. No, and you can see exactly what the problem is. But if it's you, you can't. It's the same with your marketing. Someone else can see that's the problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And look, for the people looking out, sometimes it's amazing to me what happens in those masterminds. Like I'll be thinking one thing, you know, as we're loving on someone in their love seat, someone will be saying something and I'll be thinking, and then one of the other participants will say something and I'll go,
right.
Which is why, as a facilitator, you have taught us not to talk.
Yes. Being quiet for a bit is tricky. But from a technical point of view, when you run a mastermind, so apart from the fact it's lovely being in one, and it's great for your own business because you hear great advice. I mean, I'm sure that's why my business grew quickly, is that I spend all day listening to people discuss how to grow their business. I'm like, oh, that's a great idea. I should just write that down. That's lovely. So it's good for you in all sorts of ways. From the person running it, there is no requirement to have all the answers. Everyone else speaks first. Someone comes with a question, everyone else speaks, and there's a discussion. You facilitate that. But the coaching part, you speak very, very, very late in the whole proceedings. You speak last. And if you genuinely have nothing to say, you can say, well, what a wonderful group. I think X had a wonderful thing to say. I think Y had a wonderful thing to say. Isn't it marvelous? Without you having to come up with, I'm sure that you've had this problem. In my coaching practice, occasionally people ask me a question that I'm like, I don't know. I'll go and find out for you, but I do not know. You are never stuck like that in a mastermind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because there's input from everybody. One of the reasons why I was attracted to the idea of running mastermind groups when I was looking for a mastermind coach was because in the early 2000s, I had a mastermind group, and we didn't even know it was a mastermind group. A group of work-at-home moms who were providing enough income for their family to be a significant income or all income for the family, had found each other on Yahoo, in a Yahoo group. And we created this thing we called Super Whams, and we were just the support group. We supported each other for 10 years.
Oh,
and then our kids got older and our businesses changed. And it was 2008, the economy tanked and, but to this day, I consider those ladies my best friends.
Absolutely.
And to this day, even though there's three of us that still have our businesses and the rest of them have moved on to other things. And my business isn't even the same business as it was all those years ago. I still go to them and say, what do you guys think of this idea? I'll still ask them, and any chance I get, I want to see them. And now that I live close enough that I can see them, which I didn't before, I just want, so that experience, that whole water cooler thing that happened in emails that we sent to each other, Yahoo groups didn't even have a chat room. We had to email each other.
It's like the dark ages.
But those emails were my lifeblood when my kid was 3. And, I was, trying to figure out how to code this new thing and figure out how to make the right number of drop downs on the shopping cart. And they were my lifeblood, right? They were there to throw ideas back and forth off and to just support me when I was frustrated. And then I discovered this whole concept of masterminding, and I was like, that's Super Whams. That's Super Whams.
That all along.
Yeah. And I want to help other people have Super Whams, right? I want to help others. So I was, I've told this story on the podcast before, but I stalked your videos for a long time before I showed up at one of your free events. And then I went to your free events for a long time before I actually joined your training. So now that we're on that topic, let's talk about nurture sequences. Because that's, even though it's not email nurture sequence, that is kind of a nurture sequence, the whole email to free class to paid client.
Absolutely. So in my business, everything points you to coming along to a Q&A, where if you have a question, I will give you an answer, or I will facilitate an answer from other people. Let us not pretend I know everything. So not true. So my Q&As are very small, they're very personal, and what I found, the reason I do this is that if people come 3 times to the Q&A, they buy something. So it's worth my time spending as much time as possible getting people to those calls and being as kind. And the fact they're small groups means that people actually get a little slice of coaching. So everything on my website, if you watch a video, it will suggest you come to a Q&A. If you get on the email list, it will suggest you come quite quickly to a Q&A. So from the business point of view, that's the reason. But I also know, just like you, it's going to take people a while to come to a Q&A because that's quite a big sort of social commitment. Like you've said, you're going to turn up and then you arrive at Zoom rooms. You're basically in the same room as people, really. So I know that people read me on Instagram for a long time because I microblog there daily. So they read for a long time. And most of my audience are introverts. So they are super quiet about it. They don't mail, they don't like, they don't comment. They absorb a lot of information. And then eventually, sometimes years later, they will contact me. Just as a DM, maybe they'll come to a Q&A, maybe I'll meet them in the real eventually at an event, and people will have been following me for years and years and years, which I have quite a small following, but they are incredibly loyal. And like you, eventually they'll come to a Q&A, and then fairly quickly from there, hopefully they will buy something. And obviously, hopefully they'll be very happy. That's the key, really.
Okay, let's talk about this small following because I'm all about micro influence, nano influence, and I believe that you can grow a nice business with a small audience. So
completely.
Touch on that.
So my Instagram, for instance, I have finally today just got over 1,200 people on Instagram.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. It's 12:01. It might have changed by the time we get off this call, but it has taken me so long to get that. I've had plateaus. I was at 300, then I was at 600. I was at 978 for about 4 years. It was really annoying. And if I didn't know my audience, I would think that it was effectively not worth my time to spend so much time on Instagram. But I do know my audience. So I know that people read and they pay attention and they look and they share. I share the books I'm reading quite regularly. And I cannot tell you the number of people that come to me and talk about books that I've recommended. So I know that they're in touch and I know that they are paying attention. Sometimes they will turn up with, my favorite pencil, something that I haven't talked about for years, the brand of pencil I like, the paint I like, the cake I like. So I know people are listening. But what I use Instagram for, apart from the fact is to keep people warm and to pay attention to them, is I do pre-launches on there. I talk about things that are coming, and that is incredibly effective for me. So 2 or 3 months before the launch starts, so pre-launch, I will start talking about things that are coming. And that, for me, is the real use of Instagram. That's where people, when the launch finally comes, people will tell me, oh, I was expecting this. And that makes a massive difference.
Well, that's pre-purposing. You are in strategy. So a lot of folks, and I might be one of them, have a base strategy, but they don't have a planned strategy. And watching you is like watching magic unfold. I mean, you launched a Instagram page for a business that you didn't launch for almost a year. And you were consistently posting to that Instagram profile, and it was provocative. I want to talk about provocative marketing and interesting and people, engaging. And it was highly provocative. So that's that strategy, which is your thing. I mean, you are the strategy goddess. That strategy involves a lot of planning. So what's your process for that? How do you plan that out?
So the business you're talking about there is Evil Coach. And for that Instagram account, I have very short posts. They're 1 sentence long and a lovely graphic. So obviously I worked in visual effects, I worked in graphics. So I worked with my VA to I created like a brand style for about 20 or 30 different graphics, gave her the sort of the recipe to make lots of them. And then I sat down with a spreadsheet and I just wrote 500 prompts, 500 things to go in the 500 things to go in the graphics and
Holy moly.
Well, I know it sounds like a lot, but they're 500 smutty sentences about marketing, which for me was second nature. I just churned them out. But of course, 500 anything is a year and a half of content.
Yeah. And are you doing daily posts? So
Yes, I do daily posts. I have to say at the moment, my VA is sort of recycling things. So we're on a kind of 14-month recycle, but that's fine.
With 500 things, yes, you can recycle.
Exactly. So that was very easy. I can't do that with Rethink because I do sort of most of the time I do a sort of full essay, a micro blog. I often run out of words on Instagram, which is, that's a reasonable article.
Yeah, that's 5,000 words. It's hard to do a 5,000 word blog post.
Oh, exactly. Oh, I couldn't just ramble on Instagram. It's delightful. But I recycle a lot there. So I have a lot of videos on my website, and we repost the links to them. We repost some of the core content that I have written about strategy and about masterminds and about, I used to be nomadic before the pandemic for a long time. I will be again. So I talk about that. And the reason I can be nomadic is because I run masterminds and because I have a strategy and because I do this. So those things, as long as they're not all the time, as long as you're not on a sort of 3-month repost, if it's a year, or 6 months or 8 months. I mean, frankly, who is paying that closer attention on social media?
Well, and then you have new people that you've added, and they're not scrolling backwards. So, it's good content. Why not share it again?
Exactly. And now on Instagram, you can pin the top 3 posts, which is very lovely. So you don't have to keep introducing yourself. You can just pin that at the top, which makes it easier.
Well, how did you know that that's where your audience was? Because I told you I did that week of networking. I mean, by the end of the week, I was like, I had a job this week. It felt like I had a full-time job this week. But by the end of that week, I think I had added 28 people to LinkedIn.
Superb.
And I didn't add them. They added me.
Mm-hmm.
Fine. And so that made me think, oh, maybe I need to pay more attention to LinkedIn. And I looked at my profile and I was like, oh, yeah, I really need to pay more attention to LinkedIn. So how did you know that Instagram was the platform for you?
So when I'm working with clients, I always suggest that they have either LinkedIn or Facebook. And for many, many years, Facebook was my kind of home, because like all of us have a Facebook account. But I don't know about you, but I am not using Facebook very much anymore. It feels like the big wide world. It feels like sort of going out and shouting into the street.
Yeah, I have Messenger. I have the Messenger app, and that's basically how I talk to my clients because that's how they want to talk to me. But I don't. Yeah, Facebook isn't. Yeah.
So I spent a little time on LinkedIn recently, and it turns out all my clients had done exactly the same thing. So initially, I asked people, "Are you on Facebook? Are you on LinkedIn?" And my clients are mostly coaches and copywriters and designers. They're on Facebook. Okay. And then so you have Facebook or LinkedIn, and I used to have Facebook, and now I have LinkedIn, I guess, which makes me realize I am committing to doing more on LinkedIn. God damn you, woman! And then you have to have one other social channel. Now, if you love to have lots of them, have lots of them. But I personally loathe Twitter, and I would rather stick pins in my eyes than spend any time there. And Pinterest, well, who's looking for business strategy on Pinterest? You're pushing a very large rock uphill there. Whereas all of my people, my avatar, have a great love of beauty. A lot of them have families, and a lot of them travel. The natural place for them to hang out is Instagram. And as with all things, if you're hanging out there, you'll see if your clients are there quite quickly.
Well, you can also measure traffic for the furniture business, our custom furniture business, which is a very small piece of our business now. That used to be the only piece of our business 10 years ago. Most of the traffic to our website comes from Pinterest.
Oh, of course, because that's the place where you're thinking, I'll have this room and that table, and let's see where it goes. Nobody's doing that for a business strategist on Pinterest.
No. And the other thing is on my website, momgeek.com, I have my number one page on my website. It has nothing to do with my business. It is 18 gifts to give to someone going through cancer treatment. And most of the traffic for that post comes from Pinterest. Right. So two demographics for 2 different things. That's Pinterest. That's not where I'm focusing though, because that's not, even though that's my number one page on my site, it's a great service I offer. And I occasionally get some Amazon, affiliate link income from that. It's not the focus. So I make sure I keep it maintained so it looks pretty, and I make sure all the links always work, but I don't pay attention to that page other than that. So I'm learning, the same thing happened to me. I'm learning that I need to pay more attention to LinkedIn. And what I like about LinkedIn is the articles. You can't do that on any other social media site.
I used to use Medium. I used to post not often, like once a month, maybe once every 2 months, not often. But I did get a certain amount of traffic, and I found that people would find me on Instagram, then go and look at my stuff on Medium, and then come to it sort of shortcut the coming to the Q&A, which was lovely. But Medium started charging for you to read the good stuff. It was a while ago they put up a paywall, and it just, traffic just, I'm like, who goes to Medium anymore to read?
Can't remember the last time I went to Medium.
Exactly. I had to go through some complicated, reset your password last time I was in there. So yes, exactly. But that's the thing. You've got to keep up with it. So as well as Facebook or LinkedIn, some form of social media, everybody in their outreach needs either blogging or a podcast or vlogging. They need something else. With those 3 things, choose one from each column. You can have enough outreach that people know what you're doing. I used to do a lot of speaking, so that filled in for the podcast stuff. I don't have a podcast, but I'm a guest on a lot of other people's podcasts. You don't have to do all of the heavy lifting yourself. You can just turn up like a beautiful chatty butterfly on other people's.
I would argue, I don't think I'm arguing with you about this though. I would posit that being a guest on a podcast is actually more beneficial than hosting your own podcast because of that third-party validation part of it. Especially if you are promoting, hey, I was a guest on this show, and then the relationships that you develop because of that are just enormous. And now podcast, I'm blown away by this, because I've always had a fantasy of being in show business in some way. Like when I was younger, I wanted to be an actress, and then I wanted to be a radio talk show host. So I started my own YouTube channel, did a YouTube talk show, and now I have a podcast. Well, IMDb, which is the internet's movie database, now has podcasts as one of the categories. So my podcast is now on IMDb. And it turns out I have interviewed a lot of people who have IMDb profiles. So finding that has been really fun. So, every year there's new opportunities, right? There's new opportunities. Absolutely. And finding that magical niche is, I'm spending, going forward, I did spend a lot of time on Instagram, and I found it wasn't the right, that's not where I needed to be. I'm switching to LinkedIn and focusing more on my YouTube channel. That's just where I'm putting that's what I have chosen to do, but that's not going to be the right thing for everybody.
No, and it's still the 3 things: LinkedIn, YouTube, podcast, right? You've still got those 3 areas. Because I've thought about doing more on YouTube as well, because I have a lot of videos that are on my website and on Vimeo, and for tedious reasons, they're not on YouTube. But now I'm thinking, well, maybe now is the moment, because I have 100 odd videos. That's a year and a half of content.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can schedule them. You can totally schedule. I currently have 10 shorts scheduled out for the next 10 days.
Oh, you do daily? Oh, very impressive.
Yeah, well, this is what I do. I take the best parts of my podcasts and I turn those into shorts.
Excellent. Well, that's the repurposing. That's why it's important to keep sharing the best bits. That's why it's important to have nurture sequence. That's why we take all of the good bits and feed them to the new people so that they miss nothing.
I want to go back to the nurture sequence, because I am finding that I am unsubscribing from emails and not engaging in emails much anymore. And I do 2 emails a week to my list. One of them is, this is my latest podcast episode. And the other one is, this is our topic today for the free class. I teach a free class every Thursday at 11 o'clock Eastern. It's a DIY marketing class. Mostly we focus on Canva. So if you want to be part of that, it's momgeek.com/coffee. It's called Marketing Coffee Hour. Anyway, so those are the 2 emails I send out, and that's it. I don't give any information in my newsletter other than, this is the podcast that dropped today, and this is the topic of today's class, because I don't read newsletters. So, and then you told me before we started recording that you sort of pulled away from your email nurture sequence.
Well,
so what's going on here?
So I switched off all the nurture sequences in my business, and I'd love to say it was for fantastically strategic reasons, but I moved from one email provider to another, and I switched everything off for a little period, which was I worked out how to use the new system. Turns out I hated the new system, absolutely loathed it, hated the interface. And I kept thinking, it's me, just try harder, you'll be fine. No, it wasn't me, it was them. Or actually, it's not even them, it was my brain and their interface. So I have one welcome mail say, hey, you're on the right list. That's it. But the way I nurture my list, and I will be switching on my nurture excuse me, I will be switching on my nurture sequences when I move to the new email platform, because nurture sequences work when someone has handed over their email. They are at their absolute warmest of interest, because that's the moment to say, here's some good stuff. Have another free thing. This is who I am. I'm Liz. Do you want to have do you want to have a chat? Have you got a question? Those are the moments to do it. Although that sounded a bit overly keen and monstrous. But what I do now is that when someone subscribes to my list, I get an email reminder, as a lot of people do. They get an automated Robo mail that we've all seen. You are now on the list, blah, blah, blah. I send them, if I happen to see it, I send them a personal email that says specifically, this is real Liz, not Robo Liz. I just wanted to say hello. Is there anything I can help you with? And I cannot tell you how effective it is, because it's real people talking to real people.
That's freaking genius. And a lot of us, those welcome announcement emails go to our spam folder.
Oh, yeah.
So there's a strategy for attack. I guess that would be a tactic, not a strategy. Make sure that your robo mails don't go to your spam folder, and do what Liz does. Hey, this is real Kandas. How can I help you? Welcome to the list. How can I help you? Wow, that's genius.
Well, thank you very much.
There's a reason why I adore you, and that
I like all this flattery. I'll have as much of this as you have to give out.
Oh, I love it. All right, what else do we know? Oh, I have a good story to tell you. This is funny. This was actually yesterday. I have a group coaching thing that meets on Monday, once a month on Monday, and on a Monday. And one of the participants was stuck. She had a particular problem, and the problem was something that had a solution that you had taught me. And so I shared the solution with her. And then I went, I have this great business coach who teaches me these things. And then another person in the group said, so do I. And what that meant to me was that you taught me something that I taught somebody else. You're a great, amazing business coach. And guess what? Because I learned from you, so am I. So it's kind of like, it's passing down knowledge. I mean, the reason why women for centuries knew how to take care of stuff, knew what herbs to use, was because their grandmothers taught them, right? So we're passing down, and continuing to pass down is so important. Do you want to talk about that?
Well, you pretty much covered it there, because I think we all learn from other people, and as long as you credit it, as long as you don't, we know some of those bro marketer types, it's not their own system. They just bought a business in a box somewhere and made that stuff up. And that's part of why it doesn't feel authentic. That, and the fact they claim you can make 100,000 in a weekend with from a standing start. Unbelievable. Whereas if you say, I learned this amazing thing from this amazing person, here, it might help you. I know lots of the stuff I learned, of course, is from the coaches and the mentors I had. But I also think that what you're really saying is that having a coach makes all the difference.
Oh, yes. That is very true. Okay, it's time to get dirty. So let's talk about BDSM.
Of course. What would you like to know, my love?
So you teach that BDSM has everything to do with understanding strategies. So let's dig into that. And I do have these pink,
fluffy.
I have these pink fluffy handcuffs that are because these pink fluffy handcuffs represent the time that I spoke on stage right before Jack Canfield spoke on stage, when I manifested speaking on stage with Jack Canfield in a matter of months. So that's why I carry these pink handcuffs. So they have nothing to do with BDSM. They have everything to do with Jack Canfield. But so
that sounds even worse.
I know. So talk about strategy.
So I am part of the BDSM community, which is the kink community. If there's anyone sitting at home going, what is BDSM? And BDSM isn't very well understood. What we think it's about isn't actually what it's about at all. And it's the same with strategy. What people think strategy is about, that's not really what it's about either. So if we use kink as the lens with which to learn how to run our businesses more effectively, to build better strategy, it does two birds with one stone. Like, people learn more about kink and understand that better, and people understand strategy more. And more importantly, if I sat down to say, let me tell you about strategy, nobody would be interested, because there's a belief founded on many, many very dull strategy books that strategy is immensely boring. It isn't. It's fascinating. That's not just because I am thrilled by it, but because it's the way to grow your business. Now, kink, who doesn't like something odd to learn about? And most entrepreneurs, we are curious people. We are interested in new things. And I believe very, very strongly that when we are looking at things from a new lens, it's much easier to learn. It's much it's just like giggling as well. Who doesn't love a bit of cheap smut, frankly? I said, yeah, I wrote 500 of them in a couple of hours. It's delightful.
It's humorous too. So I was lucky enough to actually be able to attend one of your Q&A sessions when you announced this program. And everybody there must have been 12 or 15 of us there at the time. And we were all laughing hysterically because it was just so perfectly funny and absurd. So it created conversation, it created humor, and humor is a really, really good way to learn. When you're laughing and learning at the same time, you absorb that message. Do you want to talk about that?
Absolutely. Well, and also you retain the information better. I find that I've been doing, so I have two businesses, effectively, Rethink Central and Evil Coach. I have a little sign for those of you listening who aren't watching. I have a sign you can see it on the video, it just says Evil Coach. These days,
clarify, it says obey Evil Coach. Just clarify.
Yes, it does. And underneath it says whip your business into shape. Just saying. So dominate the market, submit to your clients. So it's all there. So it's silly and it's obviously tongue-in-cheek, but it's also sticky from a branding point of view. It's also sticky in other ways, obviously. But from sticky from a branding point of view means that it sticks in people's mind. I worked with brand agencies and with ad agencies during my film years. We spent a lot of time with ad agencies, and having something that is memorable is really, really useful. Having something that makes people giggle. And as a member of my own community, I want people to understand that BDSM isn't, it's not scary. I suppose it can be if you want it to be. It's not scary. It's also not the way it's shown on Netflix. It's not all kind of catsuits and leather and people screaming at each other and spitting on each other. I mean, again, you can do it that way if you want to, but most of us aren't. It's about consent. It's about making a plan to achieve something very specific and hopefully pleasurable, and about all the steps you have to go through to get there. Now, all of that is basically the same as strategy. It goes without saying. You have such a great look on your face at the moment.
I am one of those people who just thinks everybody should be able to live whatever life they live. And sometimes people just equate that with, oh, Kandas must be like that. And I'm such a prude. I really am a prude.
But I think the sorry, I'm speaking over you. Carry on.
No, but I find it enjoyable to listen, and I find it enjoyable to see the pleasure that other people have in doing something. I mean, you and I think I introduced you to Jenny Bellinger, who is the BDSM,
Absolutely.
The badass direct sales mastery. She has a podcast and a summit. So, her whole thing about her coaching program is just like yours. It's, it's got that provocative theme, and I love her. She's her.
Delightful. She is delightful. Are you speaking at her summit, by the way?
I am. I just haven't settled on my topic yet.
There you go.
Yeah. Maybe I'll pick your brain about that after we hang up.
No, please do. Please do. So, but the key to the BDSM and the strategy thing, if you're still sitting at home thinking, how the hell does this fit together? If it repulses you, it's not for you. Simple as that. You're not the avatar for this. I have some lovely mastermind training you might be interested in. But if you are like most of my clients, you're fascinated by all of this stuff. I know I'm thrilled and fascinated when people tell me their reasons for doing things, ways to motivate people. And trust me, there is nobody more motivated than someone who wants to get their rocks off. And at that point, people are going to, if you have a kink, the way that's going to happen is you have to be clear, you've got to be goal directed, you have to explain yes, I do require you to wear the rubber ducky. All of those things mean that if you're not clear, you don't get results. It's the same with working with a strategist. If you are certain that you want to work on podcasts, but you have an inaudible voice or like some terrible stutter, and whenever anyone puts you in front of a microphone, that feels like a terrible liberty. If you have a terrible stutter and you want to create the stutter podcast, marvelous. Let's do that. If you're creating the podcast just because you want a podcast, that's not going to work. Same as if you buy a rubber suit just because, well, I just quite liked it. But what's the point of it? Where are you going with that? So it all fits together.
Well, with a podcast, I mean, if you aren't willing to invest in buying a decent microphone, then you shouldn't. If you aren't willing to invest in a hosting provider that you actually pay for, that you think you can have a podcast for free, you're not investing. You need to invest in the stuff that's worth it. Right. And
also your time as well. I mean, you need to be doing it for a couple of years to really see the results.
Yeah.
How long have you been doing this podcast?
I believe, I am pretty darn sure that January 1st, 2024 will be 10 years.
10 years?
Yeah.
Woo-hoo!
If it's not, it's 9. I have to actually dig back. I mean, if you've been doing that long, you have to figure out if it was 2014 that it launched or 2015. But I am pretty sure it was 2014 that I launched it.
Superb.
Isn't that crazy?
You must have seen a lot of changes in the podcast.
Oh, yeah. Well, the thing is, it's really because I set it up correctly and I have a paid host who, the chances of them ever going out of business are nil. And I set it up so that the feed comes straight from my website, and I own my website. I own my content. It's seamless. Whereas if I had used a free host, I would have lost that. I would have lost all that content. So, the way that I set it up 10 years ago is exactly the way it's set up now. I do need to make one tweak to the RSS feed, but and I'm going to have to find someone to help me do that because I don't know how to do it. But everything else about it is perfect. And the thing that I need to tweak is just Stitcher is picking up the wrong artwork. So I just need to figure out how to get Stitcher to pick up the right artwork. It's one specific thing, and I haven't figured out how to get Stitcher to get the right artwork. Okay, we are. Oh God, Liz, will you please come back because there's so much more we could talk about.
I would love to. I really would.
Awesome. Okay, so I have 2 questions I ask all my guests. The first one is, what is your favorite marketing tool, tip, or technique?
Well, here's a good question. So, I think possibly at the moment it is as simple as sending people that email that says, "Hello, it's real me, not Robo me," and it's so effective. It really is. I do it sometimes when people book a call. Same thing. People go nuts for it. I do have another one in a very similar line. So I had a client that is deeply resistant to the buy now kind of requirements. So I'd given him we'd done a sales call. I'd given him an offer, and it was like, you have to use it by Sunday. Nothing. So I sent him another email. Nothing. So I sent him a mail on the Wednesday that said, and again, this just taps into something deep in human psychology. I sent him a mail saying, look, if you've decided no, that's absolutely fine. I just want to close this out, really. But I realized that potentially this might have gone into your spam. So I sent it from a different mail thread that we'd had earlier. So I just want to check you've got this, because if you haven't got it, then hello, I have an offer for you that you must have been missing. He got back to me within about 20 minutes.
Yeah, the spam thing.
Yeah, the spam thing. People do. And it's that I just want to check you've got it. It's as simple as that. And what it triggers, I think, is just something innately humanly polite amongst us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, before I forget, the BDSM Summit, Badass Direct Sales Mastery, it's for people in network marketing and direct sales, is March 23rd and 24th. It's all day. There's 18 speakers. So it's an all day,
Exactly. And you know who 2 of them are.
Yes. And you know who 2 of them are. Yes. And this will be my 4th BDSM Summit. I really enjoy it. It's one of my favorite things I do every year.
Excellent. So, I'm really excited about it. Thank you so much for that introduction. See, there's relational marketing right there.
Exactly. Well, you know what? When I meet somebody and I like them, and I have somebody else in my network that I think that they need to know, I'm on purpose. That's one of the things I'm known for. I'm a master connector, and when I meet somebody, my brain automatically says, "How can I make this person's life better through my network?"
Superb.
So if I have made an introduction for you to somebody else in my network, it's because I highly regard you and them, which is a master connector. Okay, last question. This is disappointing for me because I could talk to you all day. All right, this is your moment of gratitude. For whom or what are you most grateful?
Well, I know it sounds a bit cheesy, but I am very grateful for my clients. But I was thinking about this before I got on, and I thought, if I heard someone say this, and I'm sure you hear this all the time, I really love my clients, they're amazing. So I'd like to be more precise. I am not only really glad for my clients, I mean, you're a client and you're ace, obviously. I get to hang out with delightful human beings all day, every day. Years ago, when I was still living in India, which I spent 4 or 5 years there, I was totting up. I'm a chronic overworker. I was totting up the hours that I'd worked that week, and I realized I had only worked 40 hours that week. It's just at the start of my business. Superb. And then I stopped and realized I'd actually worked 60 because I hadn't counted any of the hours that were contact time with my clients because they just felt like so much fun. So I'm very grateful for my clients.
Thanks for tuning in to Gratitude Geek, where we help DIY marketers attract raving fans and repeat buyers. Don't forget to check out the show notes at gratitudegeek.com for links to all the resources mentioned in this episode. If you enjoyed it, please leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Our theme music is by Rev Brock and Solely. I'm Kandas Rodarte, reminding you that gratitude is like manure. It's just a pile of poo until you spread it around. Stay groovy, my friends.
Stay groovy, my friends.
I know